I'm sure you've already heard that the San Francisco 49ers have canceled joint practices with the Saints that were supposed to occur this week. But the reason why is an interesting one, and I'm just curious, is it cause for potential concern heading into the season as we get ready to kick off a crucial 2024 campaign that hopefully, when it's all said and done, ends with a championship ring, a sixth championship ring to be exact. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on this season, a lot of eyes on this season, and we're going to discuss why this is happening. It's pretty simple. It really boils down to something that the 49ers have been dealing with since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch has taken over. Not necessarily associating or signing blame, just the simple fact of the matter is that under their tenure, the San Francisco 49ers have dealt with quite a few injuries, and it appears they have concerns about going into a joint practice with the Saints with the current health of their team. As we know, joint practices are a little bit more ramped up. There's a little bit more intensity because you're going up against another team. It's not your own teammates. The competitive nature of joint practices is much higher. That's why they are so beneficial, because you get to actually go up against guys that you're not used to. And as a result of that, the competition rises. And so it's typically good work. But now the 49ers are foregoing that work due to concerns about injury availability. And I think when you saw what the 49ers had put out in that first preseason game, there were some instances of that. Now, we understood they weren't going to run out their starters, and as they shouldn't. But backups were not playing, like Jalen Moore, who's filling in for Trent Williams. He didn't even dress up. And I think that's because, one, he has played pretty well throughout training camp. And two, it might speak to what they really believe of the backups beyond Jalen Moore for left tackle, who's kind of like your primary swing tackle at this point. And maybe an indication of where things currently stand with Trent, that they can't even afford to put Jalen Moore out there to potentially risk injury, because if they don't have him, they literally don't have a left tackle. And that's no disrespect to guys like Chris Hubbard and Brandon Parker. But right now, Jalen Moore is leaps ahead of those guys, at least from so far what I've seen in training camp. So that is just an interesting element. Now, we know Christian McCaffrey isn't out there practicing. He even said on an interview I saw on XM Sirius Radio, was saying if they had a game today that he would play, but it does sound like they're being ultra precautionary, letting him have the next couple weeks off of practice. So with these injury concerns, obviously there's no Brandon Ayuk out there. The defensive line, you don't want to, risk too much with Leonard Floyd or Nick Bosa, because you don't have a ton of great depth beyond that. And of course, you don't want to injure guys like Ward or Lenore. And with, Talanoa Hufanga potentially coming back this week, it just creates a bit of a question mark of how healthy is this team really heading into this year. We know that they had some injuries that were sustained in that game. We just saw Frank Darby waived with a injury designation in order to make room for Robbie Chosen. But this is an unfortunate situation because, like I said, I do think joint practices are beneficial for the starters, way more beneficial than anything you will see in a preseason game. So if it were up to me, I would feel more comfortable if they just canceled the rest of the preseason games and just had joint practices, because I truly believe it's phenomenal work in getting you prepared for the season, specifically for the starters. So, just curious to want to know how you guys have thought about this. Obviously, this came out yesterday, so I'm a little late to it, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on it, give my reactions to it, thinking like, man, this actually is unfortunate. I do find joint practices to be very beneficial for the starters, and the fact that they won't be going through this, they will actually just be having regular scheduled practices from the facility, just like any other practices. So I don't know, man. It's just, And again, the reasoning was due to having available bodies out there. I think the 49ers are going into preservation mode for the rest of training camp or rest of preseason with their starters. No reason to put those guys out there and potentially risk injury. So, uh, yeah, I get it. I would say this. I understand it. Makes sense. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, like, oh, what are they?" It makes sense, right? It's just like the vibes. I feel like this off season, you can probably chalk up to just vibes and the vibes not being ideal. Now, that doesn't mean that automatically, oh, the 49ers are gonna have a terrible season. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like this is kind of along those lines of not having Trent, not having Ayuk in camp, feeling their presence missed, CMC going down early, Elijah's hurt. We've had a couple guys get banged up as practice has gone on. We saw Daryl Luter exit practice. We saw Jordan Elliott exit practice. We've seen guys, just get nicked up. And, we understand there's only two things that will be stopping the San Francisco 49ers next season because they are that good of a team. It will only be self inflicted wounds or injuries. I feel like I've been saying this too since 2019 is that the 49ers have positioned themselves in such a good place that when we've seen them take steps back, it's been based on them in the sense of they're either not executing, they're they have penalties, they're not playing clean ball, or they have injuries. It is almost all within themselves. So if they can control what they can control, now you can't control injuries. That's a part of the business. Some of them are freak. You can do all the preparation in the world, and there's no stopping you getting rolled up in a pile. It is what it is. There's a lot of luck involved with injuries, I would say. But in regards to execution and the way you go out and you bring the energy and you focus throughout the week, those are definitely controllable. And those are where we see the 49ers typically slip. It's not because they're not good enough. And it's a good problem to have if you really think about it. They are positioned in a place to constantly be in a position to win if they execute their game, their style of play, and they stay healthy. And that's when you look at a season and you look at a team, and you look at a roster with Super Bowl aspirations, and regardless of whatever the vibes may be or whatever, that's still a really good spot to be in. The fact that you can control for the most part what the outcome is. And that control comes from doing your job, executing, cleaning up the penalties, all that kind of stuff, and staying healthy. So when you look at the joint practices being canceled, it's obviously health related. So I can understand it from one standpoint. I can understand you're not trying to hurt your guys, but the execution part, that I will think will be missed from this particular offseason. But you guys tell me what you think. Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? I want to know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.